Hello, dear friends. This is Jeannie from Dollhouse Rescue. I'm starting a new project tonight. Just one of my favorite things to do, and I cannot wait to get this house done. This is my Marx split level house. Some of you may know this is the featured house of the month for March. Well, I'm a little behind. I'd like to get my house put together. Maybe have it ready sometime in March. It's not in too bad a shape. It's got just a few little spots that need touched up. And of course, it's going to need to be cleaned. It's got one issue I want to share with you right off, and then I'm going to start cleaning it up. When this was shipped to me, the nice lady that mailed it, there's two big pieces here, and look, she bent them in half. So we're going to have to get that straightened out. I presume I can get that straightened out. Look at there, it's bent in half. And the other big piece, same thing. In order to fit them in the box, she thought it was okay to bend those in half. Well, maybe it is. We'll see how it goes. The piece that needs the most paint, of course, is the base. But, you know, I really enjoy working on this house. Let me get the base up here and show you. These bases typically have the most damage and the most rust, and this one's no exception. It's not got a lot, but it's got a little bit here on the corner, a little bit through in here, not too bad, and over here again on the patio. So I'm going to get this fixed up. I cannot wait to get it done. I love this house. This is the third one of these that I've worked on. The first one I did, I got it fixed up really nice and I sold it. The second one, I did just the base of it, this base and the next level up, I did for a friend of mine. So this is my third one, and this one's going to stay in my collection. Let's get it cleaned up and then we'll work on painting it. As usual, I wash it off first. I wipe it off with rubbing alcohol, and that's what's in this bottle. And then I follow it with a non-sudsy cleaner, such as Spray 9 or 409 or Awesome Cleaner. And I always spray on my rag and then wipe it off. I never spray water right on my house. I want to avoid getting water or liquid into the folds down here on the house, because once you get water in there, that can tend to lead to rust. I'm going to get it wiped off. Let you guys just watch part of it. I always like to give you a reminder, if you're working on a house that you've not worked on before, a brand perhaps, or cleaners you've not used before, you are wise to start on the bottom and do a test spot first. Make sure it doesn't get tacky or sticky as you work on it. Make sure you're not removing any paint while you're clean. I'm pretty confident with this house, but I'm going to go ahead and work on this bottom and then I'll get it all cleaned up. This is coming along very nicely. This house is not real dirty, but it is benefiting from a cleaning. The rag you can see is kind of dirty. I wanted to do a little reminder. If you find a little spot on here, try to get it off with your finger. And if it gets bigger, stop, because then you're getting the paint off. If it gets smaller, keep on working at it till you get it off. That one I think is going to need a little paint touch up. Sometimes you can tell too if that dot is raised or kind of sunk below the surface of the rest of the paint. I feel like it's sunk below, so I'm not going to mess with it too much. I use minimal liquid, as little as I can use to get the house clean, and also minimal rubbing. You can wash these graphics off if you're not careful. While I'm here, this corner is bent up. I'm going to grab my pliers and get that straightened out. So that will be done. Tonight I'm using my needle nose. See if we can just grab that and put him back down into shape. Looks good. I have finished wiping this house off, and it really was not super dirty, but just to show you how much your house can benefit from being cleaned off, even though it didn't look super dirty. This is the dirt I got off of one section of the roof, so it really benefited from being cleaned. And I always clean not only the top, but I clean the bottom too, because you never know, that could have nicotine film on there and you can't see it. One nice thing when your house is apart and you clean it, you can sometimes kind of turn it sideways like this and kind of see if you're getting all that film off. And I was able to do that on this. So it's ready to be painted now. I did just a little straightening as I went. This house isn't going to need a lot of painting. This is one of the worst pieces here. The roof has got some rust here along the edge and a few little flea bites across the roof. This section of roof is worse than the other one. And look, it's also got like a split in the roof, which I don't think will be a big issue. And the chimney will cover that. We'll just have to see, but we'll touch up this line along here. And then, of course, the base, which I already showed you, which I think these are kind of fun to fix, and so I'll probably do it first. Focus on these little sections here, this little bit here, all the way around wherever it needs a little straightening here on this corner, and I'll use my pliers for that, and then we'll get it painted up. I'm excited. Here's another little rust spot, but it's towards the back of the room. That won't be a big concern. Okay, next step is going to be straighten that corner and then paint. I have it all cleaned off, and as I cleaned it, there are a couple of little spots I straightened out. Now, I've showed you on other videos how to do that, and there wasn't anything major on this to straighten out, so I did not video that for you. But it's ready to paint now. I'm going to start. The other thing I've done is I've done just a little bit of sanding. There were a few of these spots that were just kind of rough to the touch, and I did a little sanding, and then I wiped that off again with rubbing alcohol, that dust that I sanded off of there. So the rest of what's on here, we're just going to touch it up. I'm going to start by doing the edge, though. I found before by doing on these houses that a lot of times this white edge right here is discolored. In this case, it had a little rust on it. So I'm going to mask off this green part or this flat part all the way around, and then I'm going to paint that white edge all the way around, and then I'm going to protect that with Mod Podge. Now when I take that off, I'm going to use just masking tape. Let me get that done. Now that I've done a few of these houses, I found it kind of makes sense to do things in a certain order. If they're already apart, I like to clean them, straighten them out, do a little sanding if it needs to. In this case, it makes sense to do this white edge next because otherwise, if I already had painted the green under here and then I put the masking tape on it, when I pull that masking tape off, it can pull my fresh paint off. So that's why this is a good time to get that done. Now, I showed you in a recent video my idea about covering my palette with parchment paper. Then when this gets full of paint like the other side already is, I can just rip that off and throw it away and start to paint again and not have to spend time cleaning it. I'm going to mix up what I call Dollhouse White. Now Dollhouse White just means it's white for the dollhouse, but it's probably an off-white depending on how white the rest of the dollhouse is. This is a pretty bright white, not bright white, but pretty bright. So I'm just going to mix a little bit of antique white in with this white to keep it, keep that vintage look. I'm not trying to make this look brand new. I'm trying to keep that vintage look. So I want my white to be just a little bit off white. Then I'm going to paint that white all the way around, let it dry, then cover it with Mod Podge. Now that it's dry to the touch, let's put a coat of Mod Podge on it. Now Mod Podge will seal it and it will protect it, especially here along the edge. It'll make it a little tougher so that won't get chipped up so bad again in the future. Of course, living in my doll room or in my workshop, this house won't get a lot of hard play or activity, but it may end up somewhere else someday, and it may have children playing with it again someday. So it's good to have it well protected so that edge doesn't get chipped up again. Now this goes on white, but it will dry clear, and it'll also give just a little bit of shine to that. Now that Mod Podge is dry, let's take the tape off and see how it looks. That looks really, really good. So this piece is not in bad shape, but those tiles, as is kind of normal, have got a little missing paint, especially like here on the edge. You can see it's been like kind of knocked up, and down in here. Then there's a few places out here in the middle. So it's not in horrible shape, but let's work on those tiles and get them cleaned up. Now, how I normally do that is I'll start with one color and fix all the spots of that color. So I'm going to start with yellow because there's a spot here, See, I've already got paint on my finger. And then right along here and then up here, we'll hit those little yellow spots and then we'll mix up another color. So to make that real pale yellow, I've got some white, antique white, of course yellow, and then a little bit of brown always brings the tone down, and I might do a little bit of green because it's just almost like a real pale chartreuse. Let me get that color match set up. I've got this mixed up, and like I said, it's just almost a little chartreuse, and it is a good color match. I'm going to make it just a little lighter. I added a little white to that, a little bit of that, yeah, white, because remember, it always dries just a little bit darker than it is when it's wet. That is looking really good. So I'm going to work my way along here and all those yellow little bitty dots, little flea bites along the edge. I'm going to touch up all of those and then I'll switch to another color. I ended up adding a little white and lightening that up. And I had it a little bit too green, so I added some white and a tad bit of brown. So it made it just almost like a pale tan. I'm not concerned when the color is off, especially at the start, because it almost always takes at least 2 coats to cover up those bare spots. And so the first time I'm like covering it, but the second time I do my color correction coat. So I just adjust my color a little bit, put on another coat. If that's not right, I'll do even a third coat. And if I still don't like it, I can wipe it all off with a damp rag and start over. I'm really happy with how that yellow came out. I'm going to mix up this pinkish color. And remember, I'll use a little red, a little white, and probably a little brown to get it that little bit off pink color. And we'll work on this and then a little darker shade of that to put right down in here. And then I'll hit all those pink spots and those reddish rusty spots, all of them. Now, if I have a dollop of paint I end up not using, I got more red out there than I needed, I am not above and beyond scooping that up with my brush and sticking it back in the bottle. If I get any back in the bottle, that's fine with me. Then I can just wash my brush out. I'll probably do that same thing with that little dot of green. Okay, the pink and that brownish pink are done. We're going to move on here to these little bit of green and this light blue. Probably do the light blue first and then add a little bit of green to it and do all the little green squares. I've got the paint here on my palette. White, antique white, green, blue. This is kind of a blue-green. It's called Cayman blue, and brown. I use that Cayman blue a lot. It seems to be a good color for these houses from the 1950s and 1960s. Okay, let's lighten them up. Make a very pale blue, and then we'll make a very pale greenish blue to go with it. I am pretty happy with those blue spots and the ones that were kind of a gray blue and the ones that were kind of a greenish blue. We're ready to move on to this sidewalk, and this is kind of gray, but I have found in my experience in dollhouse land that that's probably not just gray made out of black and white, but it probably needs just a little touch of brown in it to make it a little bit almost like a taupe. So I've got that mixed up. I'm going to fill these in and see how that goes. I'm pretty happy with that sidewalk. Since I've got some gray mixed up here on my palette, I'm going to move over to this area, the garage floor, and see what we can do with this spot here. I've already done a little sanding on that, so now we're just going to put a couple of coats of paint, see if we can make that look a little better.